Chapter 18. How I repented of it afterward. That business with the gun. It was a mad thing to do. It was not worthwhile anyway, and it served no purpose, only kept me tied down to the hut for weeks. I remember distinctly, even now, all the discomfort and annoyance it caused. My washerwoman had to come every day and stay there nearly all the time, making purchases of food, looking after my housekeeping for several weeks. Well, and then one day the doctor began talking about Edwarda. I heard her name, heard what she had said and done, and it was of no longer of any great importance to me. It was as if he spoke of some distant, irrelevant thing, so quickly one can forget. I thought to myself and wondered at it. Well, and what do you think of Edwarda yourself, since you ask? I had not thought of her for weeks, to tell the truth. Wait a bit. It seems to me there must have been something between you and her. You were so often together. You acted host one day at a picnic on the island, and she was hostess. Don't deny it, Doctor. There was something, a sort of understanding. No, for heaven's sake, don't answer me. You owe me no explanation. I'm not asking to be told anything at all. Let us talk of something else, if you like. How long before I can get about again? I sat there thinking of what I had said. Why was I inwardly afraid lest the doctor should speak out? What was Edwarda to me? I had forgotten her. And later the talk turned on her again, and I interrupted him once more. God knows what it was I dreaded to hear. "What do you break off like that for?" he asked. "Is it that you can't bear to hear me speak her name? Tell me," I said, "what is your honest opinion of Edwarda? I should be interested to know." He looked at me suspiciously. "My honest opinion? Perhaps you may have something new to tell me today. Perhaps you have proposed and had been accepted. May I congratulate you?" "No." "Ah, the devil trust you." "So that was what you were afraid of?" "Afraid of, my dear doctor?" Pause. "No," he said. "I have not proposed and been accepted, but you have, perhaps." "There's no proposing to Edwarda. She will take whomever she has a fancy for. Did you take her for a peasant girl? You have met her and seen for yourself she is a child that has too little whipping in her time, and a woman of many moods. Cold? No fear of that. Warm? Ice, I say. What is she then? A slip of a girl. 16 or 17, exactly. But try to make an impression on that slip of a girl, and she will laugh you to scorn for your trouble. Even her father can do nothing with her. She obeys him outwardly, but, in point of fact, 'tis she herself that rules. She says you have eyes like an animal. You're wrong there. It was someone else said I had eyes like an animal." "Someone else? Who?" I don't know. One of the girlfriends." "No, it was not Edwarda said that. Wait a bit, though. Perhaps after all, it was Edwarda. When you look at her, it makes her feel so and so, she says. But do you think that brings you a hair's breadth nearer? Hardly. Look at her. Use your eyes as much as you please. But as soon as she marks what you are doing, she will say to herself, 'Ho, here is this man looking at me with his eyes, and thinks to win me that way.' And with a single glance or a word, she'll have you 10 leagues away. Do you think I don't know her? How old do you reckon her to be?" "She was born in 38, she said." "A lie. I looked it up out of curiosity. She's 20. Though she might well pass for 15. She's not happy, There's a deal of conflict in her little head of hers. When she stands looking out at the hills and the sea, and her mouth gives that little twitch, that little spasm of pain, then she is suffering. But she is too proud, too obstinate for tears. She is more than a bit romantic. A powerful imagination. She is waiting for a prince. What was that about a certain $5 note you were supposed to have given someone? A jest. It was nothing. It was something all the same. She did something of the same sort with me once. It was a year ago now. We were on board the mail packet while it was lying here in the harbor. It was raining and very cold. A woman with a child in her arms was sitting on deck, shivering. Edward asked her, "Do you feel cold?" Yes, she did. And the little one too? Yes, the little one was cold as well. "Why don't you go into the cabin?" asked Eduarda. "I've only a steerage ticket," said the woman. Eduarda looks at me. "The woman here has only a steerage ticket," she says. "Well, and what then?" I say to myself, but I understand her look. I'm not a rich man. What I have, I've worked to earn, and I think twice before I spend it, so I move away. If Eduarda wants someone to pay for the woman, let her do it herself. She and her father can better afford it than I, and sure enough, Eduarda paid. She's splendid in that way. No one can say she hasn't a heart. But as true as I'm sitting here, she expected me to pay for a saloon passage for the woman and child. I could see it in her eyes, and what then, do you think? The woman gets up and thanks her for her kindness. "Don't thank me. It was that gentleman there," says Eduarda, pointing to me calmly as could be. "What do you think of that?" The woman thanks me too, and what can I say? Simply had to leave it as it was. That's just one thing about her. But I could tell you many more. And as for the $5 to the boatman, she gave him the money herself. If you had done it, she would have flung her arms around you and kissed you on the spot. You should have been the lordly cavalier that paid an extravagant sum for a worn-out shoe. That would have suited her ideas. She expected it. And as you didn't, she did it herself in your name. That's her way, reckless and calculating at the same time. Is there no one then that can win her? I asked. Siverty's what she wants, said the doctor, evading the question. There's something wrong about it all. She has too free a hand. She can do as she pleases and have her own way all the time. People take notice of her. No one ever disregards her. There is always something at hand for her to work on with effect. Have you noticed the way I treat her myself? Like a schoolgirl, a child, I order her about, criticize her way of speaking, watch her carefully, and show her up now and again. Do you think she doesn't understand it? Oh, she is stiff and proud. It hurts her every time. But then again, she is too proud to show it. But that's the way she should be handled. When you came up here, I had been at her for a year like that, and it was beginning to tell. She cried with pain and vexation. She was growing more reasonable. Then you came along and upset it all. That's the way it goes. One lets go of her and another takes her up again. After you, there'll be a third, I suppose. You never know. I thought to myself. The doctor has something to revenge. And I said, Doctor, what made you trouble to tell me all that long story? What was it for? Am I to help you with her upbringing? And then she's as fiery as a volcano, he went on, never heeding my question. You asked if no one could ever win her? I don't see why not. She is waiting for her prince, and he hasn't come yet. Again and again she thinks she's found him, and finds out she's wrong. And though you were the one, especially because you had eyes like an animal, I say, though, Lieutenant, You ought at least to have brought your uniform with you. It would have been useful now. Why shouldn't she be one? I've seen her wringing her hands with longing for someone to come and take her, carry her away, rule over her body and soul. Yes, but he must come from somewhere, turn up suddenly one day, and be something out of the ordinary. I have an idea that Mac is out on an expedition. There's something behind this journey of his. He went off like that once before and brought a man back with him. Brought a man back with him? Oh, but he was no good, said the doctor with a wry laugh. He was a man about my own age and lame, too, like myself. He wouldn't do for the prince. And he went away again. Where did he go? I asked, looking fixedly at him. Where? Went away? Oh, I don't know, he answered confusedly. Well, we've been talking too long about this already. That foot of yours. Oh, you can begin to walk in a week's time. Au revoir. Chapter 19. A woman's voice outside the hut. The blood rushed to my head. It was Edwarda. Gone as ill, so I've heard. And my washerwoman answered outside the door. He's nearly well again now. That Glan, went through me like the marrow of my bones. She said my name twice, and it touched me. Her voice was clear and ringing. She opened my door without knocking, stepped hastily in, and looked at me, and suddenly all seemed as in the old days. There she was, in her dyed jacket and her apron tied low in the front to give a longer waist. I saw it all at once, and her look, her brown face with the eyebrows high arched onto the forehead, the strangely tender expression of her hands, all came on me so strongly that my brain was in a whirl. I have kissed her, I thought to myself. I got up and remained standing. And you get up? You stand when I come? She said. Oh, but sit down. Your foot is bad. You shot yourself. Heavens, how did it happen? I did not know of it till just now, and I was thinking all the time, what has happened to Glan? He never comes now. I knew nothing of it all, and you had shot yourself, and it was weeks ago, they tell me. I knew never a word. How are you now? You are very pale. I should hardly recognize you. And your foot, will you be lame now? The doctor says you will not be lame. Oh, I am so fond of you because you are not going to be lame. I thank God for that. I hope you will forgive me for coming up like this without you. No, I ran nearly all the way. She bent over me. She was close to me. I felt her breath on my face. I reached out my hands to hold her. Then she moved away a little. Her eyes were still dewy. It happened this way, I stammered out. I was putting the gun away in the corner, but I held it awkwardly, up and down like that. Then suddenly I heard the shot. It was an accident. An accident, she said thoughtfully, nodding her head. Let me see. Is it the left foot? But why the left more than the right? Yes, of course, an accident. Yes, an accident, I broke in. How should I know why it just happened to be the left foot? You can see for yourself. That's how I was holding the gun. It couldn't be the right foot that way. It was a nuisance, of course. She looked at me curiously. Well, and so you are getting on nicely, she said, looking around the hut. Why didn't you send the woman down to us for food? What have you been living on? We went on talking for a few minutes. I asked her, when you came in, your face was moved and your eyes sparkled. You gave me your hand, but now your eyes are cold again. Am I wrong? Pause. One cannot always be the same. Tell me this one thing, I said. What is it this time that I have said or done to displease you? Then perhaps I might manage better in the future. She looked out the window toward the far horizon, stood looking out thoughtfully, and answered me as I sat there behind her. "Nothing, Glenn. Just thoughts that come at times. Are you angry now? Remember, some give a little, but it is much for them to give. Others can give much, and it costs them nothing. And which has given more? You have grown melancholy in your illness. How did we come to talk of all of this?" And suddenly she looked at me, her face flushed with joy. "But you must get well soon now. We shall meet again." And she held out her hand. Then it came into my head not to take her hand. I stood up, put my hands behind my back, and bowed deeply. That was to thank her for her kindness and coming to pay me a visit. "You must excuse me if I cannot see you home," I said. When she had gone, I sat down again to think it all over. I wrote a letter and asked to have my uniform sent. Chapter 20. The first day in the woods. I was happy and weary. All the creatures came up close and looked at me. There were insects on the trees and oil beetles crawling on the road. Well met, I said to myself. The feeling of the woods went through and through my senses. I cried for love of it all and was utterly happy. I was dissolved in thanksgiving. Dear woods, my home, God's peace with you from my heart. I stopped and turned all ways, named the things with tears, birds and trees and stones and grass and ants. I called them all by name, looked round and called them all in their order. I looked up to the hills and I thought, now I'm coming, as if in answer to their calling. Far above, the dwarf falcon was hacking away. I knew where its nests were, but the sound of those falcons up on the hill sent my thoughts far away. Around noon, I rowed out and landed on a little island, an islet outside the harbor. There were mauve-colored flowers with long stalks reaching to my knees. I waded in strange growths, raspberry and coarse grass. There were no animals, and perhaps there had never been any human being there. The sea foamed gently against the rocks and wrapped me in a veil of murmuring. Far up on the egg cliffs, all the birds of the coast were flying and screaming, but the sea wrapped me round on all sides as an embrace. Blessed be life and earth and sky. Blessed be my enemies in this hour. I will be gracious to my bitterest enemy and bind the latchet of his shoe. Ahoy! Sounds from one of Ermac's craft. My heart filled with sunshine at the well-known song. I rolled to the quay, walked up past the fishers' huts and homes. The day was at an end. I had my meal, sharing it with Aesop, and set out into the woods once more. Soft winds breathed silently in my face, and I blessed the winds because they touched my face. I told them that I blessed them. My very blood sang in my veins for thankfulness. Aesop laid one paw on my knee. Weariness came over me. I fell asleep. Lull, lull, bells ringing. Some leagues out at sea rose a mountain. I said 2 prayers, one for my dog and one for myself, and we entered into the mountain there. The gate closed behind us. I started at his clang and woke. Flaming red sky, the sun there stamping before my eyes, the night, the horizon, echoing with light. Aesop and I moved into the shade, all quiet around us. No, we will not sleep now, I said to the dog. We will go out hunting tomorrow. The red sun is shining on us. We will not go into the mountain. And strange thoughts woke to life in me. The blood rose to my head. Excited, yet still weak, I felt someone kissing me, and the kiss lay on my lips. I looked round. There was nothing visible. Aslan, a sound in the grass. It might be a leaf falling to the ground, or it might be footsteps. A shiver through the woods, and I told myself it might be Aslan breathing. Here in these woods she has moved. Aslan, here she has listened to the prayers of yellow-booted, green-cloaked huntsmen. She lived out on my farm 2 miles away 4 generations ago, and she sat at her window and heard the echo of horns in the forest. There were reindeer and wolf and bear, and the hunters were many, and all of them had seen her grow up from a child, and each and all of them had waited for her. One had seen her eyes, another heard her voice. When she was 12 years old, came Dundas. He was a Scotsman and traded in fish and had many ships. He had a son. When she was 16, she saw young Dundas for the first time. He was her first love. And such strange fancies flowed through me, and my head grew very heavy as I sat there. I closed my eyes and felt for Aslan's kiss. Aslan, are you here, lover of life? And have you Deirdre there? But my head grew heavier still, and I floated off on the waves of sleep. La, la, a voice speaking, as if the 7 stars themselves were singing through my blood. Aslan's voice, sleep, sleep. I will tell you of my love while you sleep. I was 16, and it was springtime with warm winds. Dundas came. It was like the rushing of an eagle's flight. I met him one morning before the hunt set out. He was 25 and came from far lands. He walked by my side in the garden, and when he touched me with his arm, I began to love him. 2 red spots showed in his forehead, and I could have kissed those 2 red spots. And the evening after the hunt, I went to seek him in the garden, and I was afraid lest I should find him. I spoke his name softly to myself and feared lest he should hear. Then he came out from the bushes and whispered, "An hour after midnight," and then he was gone. An hour after midnight. I said to myself, what did he mean by that? I cannot understand. He must have meant he was going away to far lands again. An hour after midnight he was going away. But what was it to me? An hour after midnight he came back. "May I sit there by you?" he said. "Yes," I told him. "Yes." We sat there on the sofa. I moved away. I looked down. "You are cold," he said, and took my hand. A little after he said, "How cold you are," and put his arm round me, and I was warmed with his arm. So we sat a while. Then a cock crowed. "Did you hear?" he said. "A cock crow. It is nearly dawn." "Are you quite sure it was the cock crow?" I stammered. Then the day came. Already it was morning. Something was thrilling all through me. What hour was it that struck just now? My maid came in. "Your flowers have not been watered," she said. I had forgotten my flowers. A carriage drove up to the gate. "Your cat has no milk," said the maid. But I had no thought for the flowers or my cat. I asked, "Is that Dundas outside there? Ask him to come in here to me at once. I am expecting him. There was something." He knocked. I opened the door. "Aslan," he cried, and kissed my lips a whole minute long. "I did not send for you," I whispered to him. "Did you not?" he asked. Then I answered, "Yes, I did. I sent for you. I was longing so unspeakably for you again. stay here with me a little. And I covered my eyes for love of him. He did not lose me. I sank forward and hid myself close to him. Surely that was something crowing again, he said, listening. But when I heard what he said, I cut off his words as swiftly as I could and answered, no, how can you imagine it? There was nothing crowing then. He kissed me. Then it was evening again, and Dundas was gone. Something golden thrilling through me. I stood before the glass, and two eyes all alight with love looked out at me. I felt something moving in me at my own glance, and always that something thrilling and thrilling round my heart. Dear God, I had never seen myself with those eyes before, and I kissed my own lips, all love and desire in the glass. And now I have told you, another time I will tell you of Sven Herlufsen. I loved him too. He lived a league away, on the island you can see out there, and I rode out to him myself on calm summer evenings because I loved him. And I will tell you of Stanter. He was a priest, and I loved him. I love all. Through my half-sleep I heard a cock crowing down at Surland. Islin, here, a cock is crowing for us too. I cried joyfully and reached out my arms. I woke. Aesop was already moving. Gone, I said in burning sorrow, and looked round. There was no one. No one there. It was morning now. The cock was still crowing down at Surland. By the hut stood a woman, Eva. She had a rope in her hand. She was going to fetch wood. There was the morning of life in the young girl's figure as she stood there, all golden in the sun. You must not think, she stammered out. What is it I must not think, Eva? I did not come this way to meet you. I was just passing. And her face darkened in a blush.